The transport shuttle descended through the docking bay of Station Epsilon 7, its engines humming softly as magnetic clamps secured it in place. Among the passengers stepping onto the platform was Corporal Dae-hyun Kim, a young human wearing the standard cadet uniform of the Galactic Military Academy. His dark hair was cut short according to regulations, and his brown eyes took in everything around him with quiet observation. The station was enormous. Dae-hyun had seen images before, but standing here in person made him feel incredibly small. The ceiling stretched so high above that artificial clouds floated near the top. Cadets from dozens of different species moved through the corridors in organized groups. Some towered over him at nearly 3 meters tall. Others skittered on multiple legs or floated using biological gas sacs. Earth had only joined the United Terran Alliance 20 years ago, and humans were still rare in most parts of the galaxy. A tall, reptilian figure approached him. The creature had dark green scales and vertical pupils that studied Dae-hyun with obvious skepticism. This was Instructor Ralteth, a Krillian who had trained cadets for over 30 standard years. "Corporal Kim," Ralteth said, his voice carrying a hissing quality. "You are the first human we have accepted in 5 years. Your species has a reputation for being unpredictable." Dae-hyun stood at attention. "Yes, sir. I hope to represent humanity well, sir." Ralteth made a sound that might have been a laugh or a snort. "We shall see. Report to Barracks 7. Orientation begins at dawn cycle." The barracks were designed to accommodate various species with adjustable gravity plates and atmospheric controls. Dae-hyun's assigned sleeping pod was near the window section, offering a view of the stars beyond. 3 other cadets were already in the room when he arrived. The first was a female Valkyrian named Hyojin Park. Her species came from a high-gravity world, and it showed in her powerful build and confident stance. Her skin had a faint golden shimmer, and her eyes were completely black without visible pupils. She looked at Dae-hyun and made a dismissive clicking sound with her tongue. "A human," she said to the others. "I heard they break easily. Weak bones, thin skin, no natural armor." The second cadet was Ji-won Lee, a Morphean male with pale blue skin and large, curious eyes. His species was known for their intelligence and diplomatic nature. He offered Dae-hyun a friendly gesture by extending 3 of his 4 arms. "Please ignore Hyojin," Ji-won said warmly. "She says that about every new arrival. I am curious about humans. Your species accomplished space travel very quickly compared to most others." Dae-hyun managed a small smile. "We tend to be stubborn when we want something." The third cadet said nothing, simply observing from his pod. He was from a species Dae-hyun did not recognize, with crystalline features that refracted light in strange patterns. That night, Dae-hyun lay in his pod and stared at the ceiling. He could hear the different breathing patterns of his roommates. Hyojin's was deep and slow. Ji-won's was rapid and light. The crystalline cadet made no sound at all. Dae-hyun wondered what his instructors would think if they knew how nervous he actually was. But he had trained for this. He had prepared. He would not fail. The next morning, all new cadets gathered in the main assembly hall. There were 43 of them representing 17 different species. Dae-hyun noticed he was the only human. Some cadets whispered and pointed at him. Others simply stared. Instructor Ralteth stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall. Behind him, holographic displays showed various military operations and training exercises. "Cadets," Ralteth began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "You have been selected because you demonstrated potential. But potential means nothing without discipline, courage, and the ability to face your fears. Over the next 6 months, you will be tested in ways that will push you beyond your perceived limitations." The displays changed to show images of different training scenarios: combat simulations, zero-gravity operations, diplomatic negotiations under pressure, and survival exercises on hostile worlds. "In 3 days," Ralteth continued, "you will face your first major test. For over 200 years, this academy has used a specific exercise to separate those who can control their fear from those who cannot. We call it the Void Stalker Trial." The hall became very quiet. Even the cadets who had been whispering fell silent. The holographic display changed again, showing a creature that made several cadets gasp. It was massive, easily 4 meters tall, with a body covered in black scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 6 eyes glowed with red luminescence on its angular head. Its limbs ended in claws that looked capable of tearing through metal. The tail was long and lined with blade-like protrusions. The Voidstalker, Ralteth said, is an apex predator from the death world of Krath 9. It is one of the most dangerous creatures we have ever encountered. It can smell fear, it can sense hesitation, and it becomes more aggressive when it detects weakness. Ji-won leaned close to Dae-hyun and whispered, 3 cadets were hospitalized during this test last year. They froze in fear and the creature had to be subdued with neural disruptors. Dae-hyun kept his eyes on the hologram. The creature moved with terrifying grace, its 6 eyes tracking multiple targets simultaneously. The test is simple, Ralteth explained. You will enter the combat arena in groups of 5. The Voidstalker will be released from its containment unit. Your objective is to retrieve a beacon from the center of the arena and exit through the far gate. You do not need to fight the creature. You do not need to defeat it. You simply need to complete your objective while it is hunting you. Hyojin made a scoffing sound. My people have faced worse in our planet's wilderness. This will be easy. But Dae-hyun noticed that even Hyojin's hands were clenched tightly. Fear was universal, it seemed, regardless of species or bravado. The briefing continued for another hour, covering safety protocols and emergency procedures. When it finally ended, cadets dispersed in small groups, all talking nervously about the upcoming test. Dae-hyun found himself walking alone toward the observation deck, a large area with transparent walls that offered views of the surrounding space. He stood there looking at the distant stars, trying to find Seoul among the countless points of light. Earth was so far away now, Corporal Kim. Dae-hyun turned to find a human officer approaching. The man wore the insignia of a commander and had gray streaking through his dark hair. This was Commander Tae-young Cho, the human liaison officer for the academy. Commander, Dae-hyun said, saluting. Cho returned the salute casually, then stood beside Dae-hyun at the window. I saw your file. Top marks in basic training. Excellent problem-solving scores. But how are you really doing? Dae-hyun considered the question. Honestly, sir, I am nervous about the Voidstalker test. Good, Cho said. You should be. It is dangerous. But let me tell you something about fear, Corporal. Fear is just information. It tells you what matters, what could go wrong, what you need to pay attention to. The trick is deciding what to do with that information. What would you do, sir? Cho smiled slightly. I would remember that humans spent thousands of years living alongside apex predators. Not running from them. Not always fighting them, but learning to coexist with them. We learn to read their behavior, to understand their signals, to know when to be still and when to move. That knowledge is in you whether you realize it or not. Dae-hyun looked back at the stars. The other species seem to think we are weak. Let them think that, Cho said. Weakness and strength come in different forms. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is remain calm when everything around you is chaos. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be patient when others panic. He placed a hand on Dae-hyun's shoulder. Trust yourself, Corporal. Trust what your instincts tell you. After the commander left, Dae-hyun remained at the window for a long time. He thought about Earth, about the stories his grandmother used to tell him about their ancestors, about hunters who tracked animals for days with nothing but patience and observation, about farmers who worked with animals that could easily kill them, about trainers who befriended creatures others feared. Maybe Commander Cho was right. Maybe there was strength in ways the other species did not understand yet. 3 days would pass quickly, and then he would face the Voidstalker. The 3 days passed too quickly for some cadets and too slowly for others. Dae-hyun spent his time studying everything he could find about Voidstalkers. The Academy database had limited information, mostly warnings and incident reports. The creatures were native to Krath 9, a world with gravity twice that of Earth and an atmosphere filled with volcanic ash. They hunted in packs in the wild, but could be solitary when necessary. They were intelligent, capable of problem-solving and strategic thinking, and they were absolutely lethal. On the morning of the test, the cadets assembled outside the combat arena. The structure was massive, with walls reinforced to contain even the most dangerous training scenarios. Observation decks ringed the upper levels, already filled with instructors and senior cadets who came to watch. Instructor Ralteth stood before them with a data pad in his clawed hands. The groups have been randomly assigned. When your designation is called, you will enter through Gate 7. Remember your training. Control your fear. Complete the objective. The first group was called. 5 cadets from various species entered the arena nervously. Through the transparent sections of the wall, Dae-hyun could see the massive containment unit at the arena's center. It was a cube of energy fields and reinforced metal, large enough to hold something truly enormous. A klaxon sounded. The containment unit opened. The Voidstalker emerged like living shadow made solid. Its black scales seemed to drink in the light from the arena's bright fixtures. 6 red eyes glowed with predatory intelligence as it surveyed its surroundings. The creature stood on 4 powerful legs, its body low and ready. The long tail swished behind it, those blade-like protrusions glinting. The first cadet, a tall insectoid being, took 3 steps toward the beacon before the Voidstalker moved. It was impossibly fast for something so large. The creature charged across the arena floor, and its roar shook the very air. The sound was not just loud. It carried a subsonic frequency that made Dae-hyun's chest vibrate even from outside the arena. 3 of the 5 cadets ran immediately for the exit. The other 2 tried to work together, one distracting while the other went for the beacon. It almost worked. The cadet reached the beacon and grabbed it, but the Voidstalker turned its attention fully on him. The creature did not attack with its claws. It simply stalked forward, eyes locked on the cadet, radiating such menace that the cadet dropped the beacon and fled. Training staff activated neural disruptors from the observation deck. Blue energy pulses struck the Voidstalker, causing it to stumble and retreat to the containment unit, which sealed behind it. The test had taken less than 3 minutes, and not a single cadet had completed the objective successfully. Instructor Ral Teth's voice echoed through the speakers. Group 1 fails. Next group prepare. The pattern repeated with the second and third groups. Some cadets did better than others, but the Voidstalker seemed to sense fear like blood in water. It focused on the most frightened, chasing them with relentless determination. 2 cadets managed to grab the beacon but dropped it when the creature got close. 1 cadet actually completed the objective but had to be carried out afterward, shaking so badly he could not stand. Then it was Hyo-jin's turn. She walked into the arena with 4 other cadets, her golden skin seeming to glow under the harsh lights. Her group included 2 Krillians and 2 species Dae-hyun had not learned yet. The containment opened. The Voidstalker emerged, already making that bone-shaking roar. Hyo-jin did not run. She used her species' natural speed to dart to one side, drawing the creature's attention. While it focused on her, one of the Krillians went for the beacon. The Voidstalker was not fooled for long. It spun with surprising agility and charged at the Krillian near the beacon. Hyo-jin shouted something in her native language and threw a piece of her equipment. It struck the creature's flank, and those 6 eyes snapped toward her. For a moment, predator and prey faced each other. Hyo-jin stood her ground, legs spread in a fighting stance even though fighting was not the objective. The Voidstalker approached slowly, head lowering, studying her with clear intelligence. It could probably smell her fear, but Hyo-jin's people had evolved as warriors. She knew how to push through terror. The Krillian grabbed the beacon and ran. The Voidstalker noticed but seemed more interested in Hyo-jin. It circled her once, making a sound like grinding stone. Then, as if deciding she was not worth the effort, it turned away. Hyo-jin ran for the exit, the last of her group to escape. When she emerged, she was breathing heavily, her skin slightly darker with stress, but she held her head high. She had not completed the objective herself, but her group had succeeded. That was enough. More groups went through. The success rate improved slightly as cadets learned from watching the others. The Voidstalker seemed to grow tired or perhaps bored. Its movements became slightly slower, its roars less frequent. The handlers monitoring it confirmed it was still safe to continue the tests. Finally, Instructor Ralteth called the last group. Group 12. Cadets Ji-won Lee, Dae-hyun Kim, and 3 others. Enter the arena. Ji-won looked at Dae-hyun as they walked toward Gate 7.
Stay close to the walls.
Move when it is distracted, and whatever you do, do not freeze. Dae-hyun nodded, but his mind was already shifting into a different mode. He had spent the last 3 days not just reading about void stalkers, but thinking about them. Thinking about predators in general. On Earth, his ancestors had dealt with lions, tigers, bears, wolves, creatures that could kill a human easily, yet humans had survived, not by being stronger, but by being smarter. By understanding, Gate 7 opened, and the 5 cadets entered the arena. The space seemed much larger from inside. The containment unit sat in the center like a dark monument. Somewhere in the observation decks above, hundreds of beings watched. Instructor Ralteth's voice came through the speakers, and there was something different in his tone. Pay attention, cadets. Let us see how the human handles a real predator. The containment unit opened. The Void Stalker emerged for the 12th time that day, but it did not seem tired anymore. 6 red eyes swept across the group of cadets, and its nostrils flared as it scented the air. Daehyun could smell the creature too. It carried a scent like hot metal and volcanic ash. The other 4 cadets in his group immediately moved, spreading out according to basic tactics. G1 went left, 2 others went right, and the last one started slowly toward the beacon. But the Void Stalker was not looking at them. All 6 of its eyes had locked onto Daehyun. The creature's posture changed. Its aggressive stance, the lowered head and ready-to-pounce position, shifted into something else. The Void Stalker tilted its head slightly, the way an intelligent animal does when encountering something unexpected. It took 1 step forward, then another, moving toward Daehyun with deliberate slowness. Daehyun's heart was pounding, but he forced himself to remain still. He thought about what Commander Cho had said, about what his instincts were telling him. Every part of his body wanted to run, but running would trigger the chase response. Fighting was impossible. So what did that leave? He thought about his grandmother's old dog, a large animal that had been trained for guard work. The dog could be aggressive with strangers, but with family it was gentle. The key was showing you were not a threat while also not acting like prey. Daehyun slowly lowered himself into a crouch. Not cowering, not submissive, but neutral. He kept his breathing steady and deep. He did not make direct eye contact with all 6 eyes, but he did not look away entirely either. He simply existed in the space, calm and present. The Void Stalker approached within 2 meters. This close, Daehyun could see the individual scales. The way light seemed to disappear into them. He could hear the creature's breathing, a deep rumbling sound. The heat coming from its body was intense. The creature lowered its massive head until it was level with Daehyun's face. They regarded each other in silence. Seconds passed, then a minute. In the observation deck, someone gasped. The Void Stalker sat down. It moved like a cat settling beside a person it trusted, its haunches lowering until it was resting on the arena floor. Its 6 eyes remained fixed on Daehyun, but there was no aggression in them, only curiosity and something that looked almost like recognition. Jiwon's voice came out shaky. Daehyun?
What is happening?
I do not know, Daehyun said quietly, but I think it is not going to hurt me. The other cadets stood frozen, unsure what to do. The Void Stalker's attention remained completely on Daehyun, as if the others did not exist. When one of the cadets tried to move toward the beacon, the creature's head swiveled slightly toward them, and a low warning rumble came from its throat. The cadet froze. Instructor Ralteth's voice came through the speakers, confused and sharp. Corporal Kim, complete the test. Daehyun slowly stood up. The Void Stalker rose with him, its movements mirroring his. Daehyun began walking toward the beacon at the arena's center. The creature followed, staying 3 paces behind him like a loyal guardian. The other cadets backed away, pressing themselves against the arena walls. Daehyun reached the beacon and picked it up. The Void Stalker watched but did not interfere. When another cadet stumbled in panic and the Academy Medical Center checked all 5 cadets from Daehyun's group for injuries and shock. The other 4 were cleared quickly, though they kept glancing at Daehyun with expressions that mixed awe and uncertainty. Daehyun himself showed no signs of trauma. His heart rate had been elevated during the test, which was normal, but it had returned to baseline within minutes. The medical staff found this remarkable considering what had happened. Within an hour, Instructor Ralteth arrived at the medical center with 2 other senior officers. His reptilian face was unreadable, but his movements were stiff with tension. Corporal Kim, he said formally, you will come with me. The Academy Council requires an explanation. Daehyun followed the instructor through corridors filled with cadets who had heard what happened. Some whispered and pointed. Others simply stared. News traveled fast on a station like this, and by now, every being on Epsilon 7 knew that the human had somehow made the Void Stalker behave in a way it never had before. They arrived at a conference room where several officials waited. Commander Cho was there, standing near the window. 2 others were present as well. One was a human woman in a research uniform, with dark hair pulled back and intelligent eyes behind thin-framed glasses. The other was a being from a species Daehyun did not recognize, with translucent skin and multiple sensory organs. Corporal Kim, the woman said, stepping forward. I am Dr. Mire Song, xenobiologist. This is Professor Kelnvar, our behavioral specialist. We have reviewed the footage of your test multiple times, and we need to understand what happened. A holographic display activated, showing the arena from multiple angles. Daehyun watched himself crouch before the Void Stalker, saw the creature's posture change, witnessed the moment it sat down beside him. Did you use any chemical agent? Professor Kelnvar asked, his voice carrying a musical quality. Any pheromone or biological compound that might affect the creature's behavior? No, sir, Daehyun answered. I had only my uniform and standard equipment. Did you receive special training for handling dangerous predators? Dr. Song asked. Basic training like any soldier, Daehyun said, but nothing specific to Void Stalkers. I had never seen one in person before today. Instructor Ralteth made an irritated hissing sound. This makes no sense. The Void Stalker has been used in training for years. It has never behaved this way with any cadet, regardless of species. There must be an explanation. Dr. Song studied the footage again, pausing at the moment when the creature first locked eyes with Daehyun. What were you thinking in this moment, Corporal? When it approached you? Daehyun considered the question carefully. I was thinking about dogs, actually. My grandmother had a large guard dog when I was young. It was trained to be aggressive with strangers, but it knew family. The key was not to act like prey or like a threat, just to be calm, present. I thought maybe the Void Stalker might understand something similar. Professor Kelnvar's sensory organs quivered with interest. You applied your experience with domesticated earth animals to a wild apex predator from another world? Yes, sir, Daehyun said. I know it sounds strange, but predators have certain universal behaviors. They recognize confidence. They can sense fear, but also calmness. I thought if I could show I was neither prey nor challenger, it might react differently. Dr. Song exchanged looks with Professor Kelnvar. Something unspoken passed between them. We need to conduct further tests, Dr. Song said to the room. Controlled observations in a safer environment. If this is a reproducible phenomenon, it could have significant implications. Absolutely not, Instructor Ralteth said immediately. It is too dangerous. What if the creature attacks next time? Then we take precautions, Commander Cho said, speaking for the first time. But Dr. Song is right. We need to understand this. If humans have some ability to interact with dangerous species that other races lack, the Alliance needs to know. Over the next 2 days, preparations were made. The Void Stalker was moved to a specialized observation habitat, a large enclosed area with monitoring equipment and emergency safety systems. Handlers who had worked with the creature for years were consulted. They confirmed that while the Void Stalker could be managed with proper protocols, it had never shown affection or bonding behavior with any of them. It tolerates us, one handler explained. It knows we feed it and care for it. But trust? No. It would kill us if it thought it could escape afterward. The habitat was designed to look natural, with artificial rock formations and temperature controls that mimicked its homeworld. Observation windows allowed researchers to watch from safety. Weapon systems were ready if anything went wrong. Daehyun was briefed extensively. He could refuse the test if he wanted. There was no pressure, Dr. Song assured him. But when she said this, Daehyun saw hope in her eyes. Not just scientific curiosity, but something deeper, as if this discovery meant something important. I will do it, Daehyun said. If it helps us understand, then I should try. On the day of the observation, Daehyun stood outside the habitat entrance. Through the transparent wall, he could see the Void Stalker resting on an elevated rock formation. The creature's 6 eyes opened when movement was detected, and its head lifted with interest. Commander Cho stood beside Daehyun, along with Dr. Song and Professor Kelnvar. In the control room beyond, Instructor Ralteth monitored with several other officials and the creature's handlers. Remember, Dr. Song said, if you feel unsafe at any moment, say the word extraction, and we will pull you out immediately. Daehyun nodded and stepped through the airlock. The habitat was warm, almost uncomfortably so. The ground was covered in rough sand that crunched beneath his boots. Somewhere, ventilation systems circulated air that carried that same scent of hot metal and volcanic ash. The Void Stalker rose to its feet immediately. For a heartbeat, Daehyun thought he had made a mistake. The creature was so much larger here in this enclosed space than it had seemed in the vast arena. 4 meters of muscle and scales and predatory power. But then he saw the eyes. All 6 of them focused on him with that same recognition from before. The creature descended from its rock perch with careful movements as if trying not to startle him. Dae-hyun remembered his training, remembered his grandmother's stories, remembered every nature documentary he had ever watched about predators and prey. He lowered himself into a crouch, making himself smaller but not submissive. Just present, just existing in the same space with calm acceptance. The Void Stalker approached. Closer than before, so close that Dae-hyun could feel the heat radiating from its body. The creature's breathing was steady and deep. It circled him once, sniffing, processing information through senses Dae-hyun could barely imagine. Then the Void Stalker did, something that made Dr. Song gasp in the observation room. It lowered its massive head and gently pressed it against Dae-hyun's shoulder. The gesture was unmistakable. The handlers monitoring from the control room recognized it immediately as something Void Stalkers did with their own pack members in the wild, a sign of acceptance. Of trust, Dae-hyun remained very still for several seconds. Then slowly he raised one hand. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hand moved through the air closer to that scaled head, until finally his palm rested on the creature's skull between 2 of its eyes. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. The Void Stalker's eyes closed halfway, a sign that its handlers knew indicated contentment. A low rumbling sound came from deep in its chest, but this was not aggression. It was something else entirely. Remarkable. Professor Kelnvar's voice came through a small speaker in Dae-hyun's uniform collar. Its stress hormones are decreasing. Neural activity shows relaxation patterns. It is comfortable. For the next hour, Dae-hyun simply sat with the creature. Sometimes the Void Stalker would move away to investigate something in the habitat, but it always returned to settle near him. When Dae-hyun stood up to walk, the creature followed. When he sat on a rock formation, it lay down at his feet like an enormous deadly guard animal. Dr. Song monitored everything with intense focus. "Look at the posture," she said to Professor Kelnvar. "It is treating him like a packmate. Not a handler, not a food source, but an equal." "But why?" Instructor Ralteth demanded. "What is the mechanism?" "I have a theory," Dr. Song said, pulling up data files on her tablet. "I have been reviewing historical records of humans interacting with dangerous fauna on various worlds. There are dozens of cases. A Valkyrian combat beast that only its human handler could approach. A Sarathi swarm guardian that became docile around human researchers. A Krynoth war animal that refused to fight when paired against human opponents." She displayed the files on the main screen for everyone to see. "The pattern is consistent. Humans seem to have an ability to communicate with predator species across vast biological differences, and I think I know why." Professor Kelnvar studied the data with his multiple sensory organs processing information. "Your hypothesis?" "Humans evolved on a death world," Dr. Song explained. "Earth has more apex predator species than any other planet in the Alliance. Humans survived not by being the strongest or fastest, but by being the most." The story spread across the station like wildfire and then beyond. Within days, news of the human who befriended the Void Stalker reached other Alliance stations and planets. Communication networks buzzed with speculation and debate. Some called it a miracle, others suggested genetic modification or hidden technology. But those who had witnessed it firsthand knew the truth was simpler and stranger. Dae-hyun found himself at the center of attention he never wanted. Cadets who had ignored him before now approached with questions. Some wanted to know if he could teach them. Others simply wanted to be near someone who had done something impossible. Hyo-jin, the Valkyrian female who had mocked him on his first day, approached him in the mess hall one morning. "I owe you an apology," she said, her black eyes meeting his without pride or shame, just honesty. "I judged your species without understanding. What you did in that arena, what you did in the habitat that required courage of a kind my people respect." "Thank you," Dae-hyun said quietly, "but I do not think I did anything special. I just tried to understand." "That is exactly what makes it special," Ji-won said, sitting beside them with a tray of food. "Most beings, when faced with a predator, react with instinct. Fight or flight. You did neither. You communicated." The Academy Council met in emergency session to discuss the implications. Dr. Song and Professor Kelnvar presented their findings, including analysis of Dae-hyun's interactions with the Void Stalker and the historical data they had. compiled about humans and dangerous creatures. We have verified 47 separate incidents across 22 worlds, Dr. Song explained to the assembled council members. In every case, humans demonstrated an unusual ability to calm, communicate with, or bond with species that other races found untamable or dangerous. She displayed a case study. On Velkaris 3, a military unit employed combat beasts that were trained from birth to be aggressive. They bonded with one handler each and tolerated no others. When human advisors arrived to assist with alliance integration, 3 of these beasts became docile around the humans within days. Their original handlers were shocked. Another case appeared on screen. On Research Station Gamma 9, scientists were studying swarm guardians from Sirath. These creatures are territorial and attack anything that approaches their nests. A human xenobiologist named Dr. Park accidentally entered a restricted zone and encountered a guardian. Instead of attacking, the creature allowed her to approach and even touch its offspring. The lead researcher, a Sirathi himself, said he had never seen such behavior in 30 years of study. Professor Kelnvar added his analysis. The evidence suggests that humans possess what we might call predator recognition. They evolved in an environment where understanding dangerous creatures was essential for survival. This ability appears to operate on multiple levels: behavioral reading, pheromone signaling, and most importantly, psychological projection of calm authority. One council member, an elderly Krillian female named Var, then spoke up. But surely this makes humans unpredictable. If they can influence creatures we use for security and military purposes, what prevents them from being a threat? Commander Cho, representing human interests, responded firmly. With respect, council member, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding. Humans do not control these creatures. They communicate with them. There is a difference. Daehyun did not command the Void Stalker. He simply existed in a way it recognized as non-threatening and possibly familiar. Instructor Ralteth, who had initially opposed further testing, surprised everyone by speaking in support. I have reviewed all the data. I have watched Corporal Kim's interactions repeatedly. He used no deception, no tricks, no technology. He simply demonstrated a skill his species evolved naturally. If anything, this makes humans valuable assets to the Alliance, not threats. The debate continued for hours. Some council members worried about the implications for current security protocols. Others saw opportunity. If humans could work with dangerous fauna, entire worlds might become accessible that were currently too hazardous to colonize. Research stations studying predatory species could be safer with human staff. Military operations might benefit from humans working alongside creatures other species feared. Finally, Council Leader Var then called for order. We must make a decision. The question before us is simple. Do we recognize this human capability as beneficial to the Alliance, and if so, how do we proceed? A vote was called. The result was overwhelming. 43 council members in favor, 7 abstaining, none opposed. Var then turned to Commander Cho. Bring Corporal Kim before the council. Daehyun was in the training yard when the summons came. He had been practicing basic combat forms with Jiwon, who had become a close friend. The message on his communication device simply said to report to the council chambers immediately in dress uniform. This is significant, Jiwon said, his blue skin darkening with concern. The full council only meets for important decisions. Daehyun cleaned up quickly and changed into his dress uniform. The dark blue fabric fit well, and the insignia of a corporal gleamed on his collar. He had worn this uniform only once before, at his graduation from basic training. Now he wore it to face the most powerful governing body in this sector of the galaxy. The council chambers were impressive, a circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Every seat was filled. The observation gallery held dozens more beings all watching. Daehyun walked to the center platform, his boots clicking on the polished floor, and stood at attention. Council Leader Varthen looked down at him with ancient eyes. Corporal Daehyun Kim of Earth, you have demonstrated an ability that has caused us to reconsider our understanding of your species' place in the Alliance. I have questions for you. Yes, ma'am. Do you understand why the Void Stalker responded to you the way it did? Daehyun chose his words carefully. I believe it recognized that I was not a threat, ma'am. But I was also not prey. On Earth, my ancestors learned to coexist with dangerous predators by understanding their behavior and communication. We learned to read body language, to sense mood, To know when to be still and when to move. I think the Void Stalker understood this about me. Could other humans do what you did? I think so, ma'am. With proper training and understanding, yes. This is not something unique to me. It is part of how humans evolved to survive on Earth. Var then nodded slowly. And if we asked you to work with dangerous creatures professionally, to study them and help others understand them, would you accept such a role? Daehyun felt the weight of the question. This was bigger than just him. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy. Yes, ma'am. I would be honored. But I would also want to teach others. This should not be just a human ability. With patience and proper training, I believe many species could learn to communicate with predators more effectively. A murmur went through the council. This answer had been unexpected. Var then conferred briefly with the council members nearest her, then addressed Daehyun again. The council has made a decision. You will complete your current cadet training with a specialized focus on interspecies behavioral dynamics. Upon graduation, you will be assigned to a new program we are establishing, the Predator Integration Initiative. You will work with dangerous fauna, study their behavior, and develop protocols for safe interaction. Most importantly, you will train others in these methods. She paused, letting the significance sink in. Additionally, we are establishing a formal research program to study human capabilities in this area. Dr. Song will lead this effort. We expect humans will become valuable consultants for colonies on death worlds, research stations studying dangerous species, and military units that employ combat fauna. Daehyun saluted. I understand, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity. Do not thank us yet, Corporal, Var then said, and there might have been a hint of humor in her voice. You will be working with creatures that could kill you in seconds. You will be tested constantly, and you will bear the responsibility of proving that your species can be trusted with this role. I accept that responsibility, ma'am. Then you are dismissed. Report to Dr. Song tomorrow morning to begin your new training curriculum. As Daehyun left the chambers, he found a crowd waiting outside. Cadets, instructors, even some senior officers had gathered to hear the decision. When they saw him emerge wearing his dress uniform and walking with purpose, they understood something significant had happened. Hyo Jin was among the crowd. She approached him directly. What did they decide? They are creating a new program, Daehyun said, for working with dangerous creatures. I will be the first in the program, but not the last. They want me to teach others. Jiwon's large eyes widened with excitement. This is incredible. You are making history. We are making history, Daehyun corrected. This is not just about humans. This is about all of us learning to work together with the wild things of the galaxy. That evening, Daehyun returned to the habitat where the Void Stalker was kept. The creature was sleeping when he arrived, curled on its rock formation. But as soon as the airlock opened, 6 red eyes snapped open. The Void Stalker rose and approached the transparent barrier that separated the habitat from the observation area. 3 months passed quickly. Daehyun completed his regular cadet training with high marks, but his real education happened in the laboratories and habitats where Dr. Song's team studied interspecies behavior. He learned the scientific terms for what he had done instinctively: non-threatening posture projection, chemical signaling awareness, predatory hierarchy recognition. But the core of it remained simple. Understand the creature, respect it, and do not pretend to be something you are not. The Void Stalker, which the handlers had started calling Shadow at Daehyun's suggestion, became part of the training program. Other cadets could now enter the habitat under supervision, learning to read Shadow's moods and signals. Shadow tolerated them, which was progress, but the deep bond remained only with Daehyun. When he entered the habitat, Shadow would immediately approach and press its head against him in greeting. When he left, Shadow would watch the door for hours. Hyo Jin had applied to the Predator Integration Initiative and been accepted. She brought her warrior discipline to the training, learning patience alongside strength. Jiwon joined as well, his scientific mind cataloging patterns and behaviors. 10 other cadets from various species made up the first class. They learned from Daehyun, from Dr. Song, from the creatures themselves. Then came the emergency transmission. A transport ship called the Meridian had crashed on Dust Moon, a small satellite 3 days' journey from the station. The ship had been carrying xenofauna specimens from a research expedition. The crash had damaged the containment systems, and creatures had escaped into the moon's canyon systems. Among them were 2 more void stalkers and several other dangerous predators. The dust moon had a small research colony of 43 beings. They had sealed themselves in the main habitat and sent a distress call. The creatures were circling the habitat, testing the defenses. The colony had maybe 72 hours before the environmental shields failed, or the creatures found a way inside. A rescue operation was assembled immediately. The problem was simple. Traditional capture methods required tranquilizing the creatures, but they were in unfamiliar territory, frightened and aggressive. The dose needed to safely sedate a void stalker was dangerously close to the dose that could kill one. And with the creatures in a stressed state, they would be resistant to sedation anyway. Commander Cho called Dae-hyun to the operations center. The room was filled with officers planning the rescue. Maps of Dust Moon's surface covered the displays showing the crash site, the colony, and the estimated locations of the escaped creatures. "Corporal Kim," Cho said formally, "we need your expertise. Traditional capture will likely result in casualties, both for our people and the creatures. Do you have an alternative suggestion?" Dae-hyun studied the maps. "If I could get close to the void stalkers, I might be able to calm them. Once they are calm, they could help us locate and settle the other creatures. Void stalkers are pack hunters in the wild. They understand cooperation." An officer, a Krillian male with scarred scales, made a scoffing sound. "You want us to trust the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy to help us capture other dangerous creatures?" "That is madness, is it?" Dae-hyun asked. "Shadow has been helping us train cadets for 3 months without a single incident. These void stalkers are scared and confused. They are in a place that smells wrong, feels wrong, looks wrong. If someone could show them there is no threat, that there is a path to safety, they would take it. And if you are wrong?" the officer demanded. "If they attack, then you will have your weapons ready," Dae-hyun said simply. "But I do not think I am wrong." The debate was intense but brief. They did not have time for long discussions. Every hour that passed put the colony at greater risk. Finally, Commander Cho made the decision. "We go with Corporal Kim's plan, but with modifications. We take a full security team, heavy weapons, and emergency extraction protocols. And we take Shadow," Dr. Song objected immediately. "You want to take Shadow to the moon? That is incredibly risky. What if something happens to it?" "Shadow knows Dae-hyun," Cho explained. "And Shadow knows what void stalkers are supposed to be. If we bring Shadow, it can help communicate with the others. Animals learn from each other. Shadow can show them that humans are not threats." The rescue team was assembled within 6 hours. Dae-hyun, Commander Cho, Hyojin as combat specialist, Ji-won as xenobiology support, and 8 experienced security officers. They loaded onto a fast transport ship along with specialized equipment and, in a specially designed containment transport, Shadow. The Void Stalker did not like being confined, even temporarily. It paced in the transport unit, making low, distressed sounds. But when Dae-hyun stood beside the unit and placed his hand against the transparent wall, Shadow calmed immediately. They stayed like that for most of the 3-day journey, human and predator, connected through trust. Dust Moon was a barren place, all red sand and deep canyons carved by ancient water that had long since disappeared. The crashed transport ship lay crumpled in a canyon, its hull torn open like discarded packaging. The research colony sat on a mesa 3 kilometers away, its domed structures gleaming under harsh sunlight. The team landed half a kilometer from the crash site. Sensors showed multiple large heat signatures moving through the canyons. The void stalkers were easy to identify by their size and thermal output. Other creatures were harder to classify, but all of them registered as dangerous. "Remember the plan," Commander Cho said as they prepared to disembark. "We locate the void stalkers first. Dae-hyun and Shadow make contact. The rest of us maintain a secure perimeter. If things go wrong, we extract immediately. No heroics, they open Shadow's transport." The void stalker emerged cautiously, its 6 eyes scanning the unfamiliar landscape. The gravity here was slightly lower than standard, making movements feel strange. The air carried unfamiliar scents. Shadow made a questioning sound, looking to Dae-hyun for guidance. "It is all right," Dae-hyun said quietly, though he knew Shadow did not understand the words. But tone mattered. Calmness mattered. He started walking toward the canyon, and Shadow followed. The team moved in tactical formation. Hyojin took point. her Valkyrian reflexes making her ideal for forward scouting. Jiwan monitored the portable sensors, tracking the heat signatures of the escaped creatures. The security officers kept weapons ready but not raised. Everything depended on appearing non-threatening. They found the first Void Stalker in a narrow canyon, cornered and desperate. The creature was smaller than Shadow, probably younger. Its scales were scratched and dulled from the crash. When it saw the approaching group, it roared in warning and reared up on its hind legs, displaying its full size. The security officers tensed, weapons beginning to rise. But Daehyun raised his hand, signaling them to stop. He looked at Shadow and nodded slightly, a gesture Shadow had learned meant to proceed. Shadow moved forward slowly, separating from the group. The younger Void Stalker focused on Shadow immediately, recognizing its own kind. There was a tense moment when both creatures assessed each other. Then Shadow made a series of low vocalizations, sounds that Daehyun had heard before but never in sequence like this. Communication. Shadow was talking to the other Void Stalker. The younger creature's aggressive posture softened slightly. It responded with its own sounds, questioning, uncertain. Shadow sat down, just as it had sat beside Daehyun months ago in the arena, the universal signal of non-aggression. Daehyun moved forward carefully, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He crouched down between the two Void Stalkers, making himself vulnerable, showing complete trust. The younger creature watched him with all 6 eyes, its head tilting in that gesture of curious intelligence. Then, cautiously, it approached. It sniffed Daehyun, processing information through senses he could barely comprehend. Shadow remained sitting but alert, ready to intervene if needed. But it was not needed. The younger Void Stalker recognized something in Daehyun, just as Shadow had. It sat down facing him. Incredible, Jiwan whispered into his communicator. Both creatures are exhibiting pack acceptance behavior. Daehyun is part of their social structure now. They found the second Void Stalker an hour later, deeper in the canyons. This one was larger than Shadow, probably the dominant of the 3. It was also more aggressive, having killed one of the other escaped creatures, a herbivore that had been unfortunate enough to wander into its territory. This time, Shadow and the younger Void Stalker approached together, with Daehyun walking between them. The message was clear. This human was pack. The large Void Stalker responded to its own kind in ways it never would have responded to armed soldiers. The confrontation lasted 20 tense minutes. There were moments when Daehyun thought it would fail, when the large Void Stalker would decide to fight rather than accept. But Shadow stood firm, not aggressive but unyielding, and Daehyun remained calm, showing neither fear nor challenge. Finally, the large Void Stalker approached Daehyun and performed that same gesture, lowering its massive head and pressing it gently against his shoulder. Acceptance, recognition, pack. With all 3 Void Stalkers cooperating, the rest of the rescue operation went smoothly.